John with Chest Freezer Cold Plunge, and I'm very excited today to have Kristin Weitzel with us to have a conversation about some really cool stuff. And just to give you a brief introduction about Kristin, she is the founder of Warrior Woman Mode, and she helps transform women who are on the edge of burnout into energized warriors with less stress, less body fat, higher performance to become the most powerhouse version of themselves.
Amazing.
Is that right?
Amazing. Yes. I'm going to put you on payroll.
Yeah. Well, and she does this through you do this through like three pillars, right? It's like the nutrition, fitness, and then you add biohacking.
Yeah, that's an important one.
And it's highly individualized for the person you're working with, so that's how you can get such amazing results.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with, and the connection here was we met at an event just recently that was happening in Austin, and we kind of had this connection about the cold water immersion piece. And I was just, like on the edge of my seat listening to Kristin talk because she has just so much depth of knowledge about it from what she's been doing. So I wanted to have this conversation with you, and I'm super grateful that you're here today.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really important to mention is that the other big connection that we had was I was like, you're the guy I bought the ebook from on chest freezers a few years ago. And that was like, I was trying to find the right kind of seal, and you had all the answers. So that was a beautiful, it was just serendipitous that we saw each other, and we were like, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's this deeper connection that we didn't even know about.
Right,
so,
yeah, that's really cool to find that sort of thing. Like I can help people with the tech support on the chest freezer builds, and you can get them in about how to do the cold water training.
Yeah. So, better together.
Right, it's a good combination. So now, how did you get started in all of this? What is just give us a little bit about your background and your story.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about how I got started in cold, I guess, more than anything else.
Okay,
but I grew up a dancer, and I really got interested in food and physique transformation because there's a lot of body dysmorphia in the whole landscape of dancing and ballet and things like that. And so I got really curious really young around how I could feed myself, fuel myself in a way that would give me vitality but also the physique I wanted. And so that kicked off kind of the journey of curiosity that led into many, many different styles of eating and doing a lot of N of 1 experimentation. And that led into more fitness training and certifications and understanding yoga and breathing in that sense. And then continuing onward through trainings like Xpt and Oxygen Advantage with Patrick McEwen, and a really interesting trajectory into the biohacking world when it was I think a newly coined phrase by Dave, Dave Asprey. And so 12 years ago or something, he coined the term, and then it landed in the dictionary a few years ago.
Oh,
and
wow.
so sort of interesting, that word biohacking. I think it's pretty polarizing. Some people don't love it. I think women in the beginning thought it was less approachable. And I wanted to be able to bring not just the nutrition and the fitness piece, which is a bit more common, that people are aware and knowing of what those things are, but really bring biohacking to the forefront on an individualized basis for women, so we can work with our hormones and all the differences we have from men, biological males, to be able to really get people like healthy and stepping into their powerhouse selves.
Right.
There's a lot of pieces of that. So that's the overarching landscape of how I got here.
And that was actually part of it that really interested me, because I haven't heard anybody else talking about a distinction between how men and women's bodies respond to cold water immersion.
Yeah.
And I've got quite a number of women. Well, not not as many women in my group as men, but there are some really women doing some amazing stuff in my group, and I think it was really super valuable to get that message out there.
Yeah. And I think that there's the interesting distinction, which we'll talk about this, I'm sure in a minute, but there's interesting distinctions to talk about from a hormonal standpoint when women are in their reproductive years. Along with cold, there's interesting distinctions about breath. Our breath shifts as our cycle shifts monthly. And those things are considerations that we need to manage when we're dealing with cold exposure, when we're dealing with working out, when we're dealing with a lot of things. So that's a cool piece that we can tap into. And then also there's plenty of great considerations for men around timing and cold exposure for boosting testosterone and things like that, which there's so much interesting research, as you know, in deliberate cold exposure, ice baths, whatever we want to call it. And it's also a really wide smattering of research with a lot of different temperatures and people and time. And so it's a boatload of information to organize. And a lot of it is, we learn a lot from anecdotal evidence as well, which is always a challenge, right? Because it's not like a double-blind beta test study and things like that. But going back to the cold,
you observe thousands of people getting a similar result, you kind of start to put things together. And it's kind of an evidence-based approach. And that's, I think, one of the downsides of the whole peer-reviewed double-blind. That's a gold standard. There's a lot of issues with that system.
Yeah.
And for that stuff to even get implemented to become widely known, it can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to have people who are on the front lines.
For sure. On the front lines, yeah. I'm first in the ice, anytime I can be.
Right.
The beginning of my ice journey or my cold exposure journey was years and years ago. I think we had this conversation briefly the other day, but I was living in New York City and I was exploring in places I was traveling for work. I had a big corporate job for a while, and in New York City where I lived, I was going to like the Turkish and Russian bathhouses and spas, if you will, so kind of a different term I think than they use. And I was also going to the Korean spas in Koreatown, and everywhere that I went, because I just loved the modalities there, right? They had really hot saunas and all different experiences that I knew had health benefits. And quite frankly, they were less expensive than like a 5-star, 4-season spa, like where you go and have a half day and it costs you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And so I was really into the jjimjilbang, I don't know how to exactly pronounce it, in the Korean spas where they do a scrub and you can go in the cold and the heat. And the Russian and Turkish baths in New York were just a staple for me and pretty inexpensive to go to. And they had days that were just women only, so you could kind of go there and be in the buff and just run around with your girlfriends. And it was like a nice break from, going out, and it was another way to socialize without being in the bars. And so that was the first time I started to be like, oh, cold is so interesting. But I was putting myself in the cold 30 seconds, 60 seconds, tolerating getting it up to my neck, thinking this is pretty insane, this is all I need, or I don't really know how to manage. I definitely didn't know how to manage my breath in correlation, even though I was doing yoga nidra and other meditation breath work, and I hadn't correlated the two, or my nervous system response to the sauna either at that point. But I knew that there was like something special in it, and I could always, I sort of, with the people I knew or who were going with me, they were like, you can really get in hot and you can get in really cold and stay in. It was sort of like I'm going to champion it a little longer than everybody else. Like that's very like, Puma energy, A-type personality. But I just really loved that extreme temperature shift, and whether my body was felt like it was loving it as well. So that's where all the cold started. But that was like 10 years of a trajectory. I didn't ever, if you had said to me then, you're going to be cold coaching and putting people in ice, like over 1,000 people in the ice at this point, I would be like, why would I be doing that? And that's the interesting piece. But now it's like 3 or 4 years since I did my first certification, which was Xpt Certification. That was exposure to the correlation of nervous system, breath, and cold, as well as sauna. We did a lot of stuff with sauna. For anyone who's not familiar, Xpt is Laird, Hamilton, and Gabby Reese's certification format.
And for people who don't know, say who Laird Hamilton is and Gabby Reese.
Laird Hamilton is a big wave surfer, super famous. If you don't know who he is, just Google him because there's amazing footage. He's an incredible guy. Really like childlike attitude of the way he approaches everything in a sense of play in life. And Gabby Reese is just a phenomenal, she was a pro volleyball player, 6'3", stunningly beautiful woman who is just grounded and really understands how to communicate in a direct way. And that really kind of helps when you're doing things like putting 35, 40-pound dumbbells in a pool and you're sinking to the bottom and doing weights. And there's a lot of things within that training landscape that can be intimidating and make you feel like, how can I stay in my body when my mind is racing in a different direction? And so the funny story about that specific training, even though I went on to do other trainings, I work with Casper Van Meulen all around breath, and we do talk cold, but it's mostly around breath. But Casper was Wim Hof's right-hand man, so there's always that like circle of influence of getting in the cold because everyone knows who Wim is, and that was really interesting it's been interesting to work with him and be mentored by him. And then just working with this Oxygen Advantage breathwork program. So all of the certifications have done this beautiful job of layering different ideas around breath and around cold and around managing the nervous system. And that's been really helpful for me to expand my horizons and understand that there's more than one way to do this, But
one of my favorite quotes is from Rumi. He said, there are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground.
Yeah.
And so I love it when we say, here's a way, and we can find the ones that work best for us rather than like getting really, dogmatic about the approach.
Yeah.
So you have more tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, and then you don't have to use them all, right? And that's the good part. Is just gaining an understanding. And from the time I was younger and exploring food, I had that curiosity to ask the questions. I think a lot of people would say, Kristin asks a lot of questions, and that's something I don't shy away from. And it's helped me along the way discover a couple of things, a lot of different things around this specific practice, but also asking questions and questioning myself and things that I'm walking around and saying in the world. Like, where did you hear that first? What research did it come from? Does it have a level of accuracy? Has the science shifted or changed? Do you really believe that? You know, a lot of times I say you got to know how you like your eggs. You have to be kind of really clear on the things you're going to say, especially in the realm of this, right? You're coming to the table as an expert on this is how you set the things up and how they work. So we have to give people the best information available that we really are, steadfastly standing on.
Right, and that seems to be one of the challenges out there. It's almost a double-edged sword of having YouTube, and people do something and they get really excited about it, whether it's just some random guy off the street who does a cold water or an ice bath and gets excited and posts his thing and said, here's how to do this. Or if it is, Wim Hof trainers, and you've got the huge gamut.
Yeah.
But there's people out there that have just this tiny bit of exposure to something, and then they start sharing it like they really know what they're talking about. And they can give people a broad overview, but there's some details or subtleties that they're missing.
Yeah.
And that can be a concern too. And it happens in the world of chest freezers too.
Yeah,
totally. Some of these really big influencers.
People are like, I'm excited, I bought all the things. I just went to Home Depot and asked some guy who's never built one before.
Right. And they said, this silicone will be fine. And then they seal it, and then, oh my God, it's all leaking and rusting. And so it turns into the same thing. We want to spread the joy. And then how do we do that in a way that's really coming from a place of integrity, and to make sure people are, getting the transformation, but, safely.
Yeah, and effectively and efficiently, so that they're learning all the time. I say, I failed at this thing, and then this is why I can tell you to do it. So don't waste the time on the trail.
Right.
Get to the end result, because we've already kind of been through some of these trials.
Right.
Yeah. So
and that's another
cool.
very fascinating thing that you brought up, and I think I heard the minimal effective dose.
Mm-hmm.
And I was introduced to that idea through Tim Ferriss's work. But then on the other side of that, there's the point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting balance in between. So I'd love to hear you talk more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I just did a post on Instagram, right? It's where we all share a lot of information, which is always interesting because it's it's an open landscape for everyone to share information. But what's been going on a bit in the cold community lately is a little bit of this competitive edge vibe. This a little bit of, Joe Rogan is a big, successful, powerful man who is strong and, has a pretty high level of mental toughness. So when he gets on social, for anyone who hasn't seen, he got on social media and got into this Morosco forge, which is absolutely by far one of my most favorite cold plunges to get into. But he got into this forge for a minute or so and then was like, this is so cold, I'm out. I want, body response, a minute, I'm done, that's good, And I think what happened was that some of my other heroes, even, a lot of men in that sector, Jocko Willink and David Goggins, were probably yo, a minute? Come on. What do you're like an MMA guy, this, you're a big deal. You're going to do a minute? You got more than that, right? I kind of called him out, took him to the mattresses. So then the next day or so, he got on and did a 20 and a half minutes or something, ice plunge in the forge. And the whole thing is live. And while I see a lot of interest in that, I also recognize the level of responsibility that he has with such a massive audience, right? I haven't checked recently, but it's millions of views that this video has gotten. And I love that it's rising the tide and letting people be exposed to cold exposure. I love that Joe Rogan is pushing his edges and doing a little bit of a competitive thing about it. But what I don't love is that I think a couple things are happening on the opposite side, which is people are looking at that thinking, I could never do that. Because he has a physical response. You watch his physiology go through all the 7 stages or whatever it is of ice plunging, and at the end he's having a very strong shiver response that I think to a common person who's never done that before, we might go, oh shit, that is a lot of shivering, that looks dangerous, right? And so I want, and I wanted to, with my social post recently, just saying, I'm in a forge. I've done that. I've done the time. I've done 10 and a half minutes at 35 degrees, and I know what that feels like. I don't push my edges beyond too much of a minimum effective dose, but my edges over years have grown, and so I feel like I can do it and talk about it. And even in all honesty, the 10 and a half plunge I did here in Austin just a couple weeks ago, someone was asking me questions, interviewing me while I was in an ice plunge, and so I kind of lost track of time. I might have said, maybe it's time for me to get out now, and so I didn't really realize till after, but the pushing of the edges it's cool in some regard. And also I want to expose people to the fact that you just need to start with where you are at, right? Like you start in the place that you feel comfortable, and you can start with a cold shower, or you can start with cryotherapy if you're into that. And we can talk about why I prefer ice submersion versus that, and why the literature clearly says that there's 10x the long-term benefits. Really, you get some short-term benefits from cryo and from cold showers, amazing. And that being said, there's all the longevity benefits, all the big cellular health benefits, all the optimal wellness boosting benefits come from the submersion. They really do. Just there's so much more research around that, and so much more we're shifting our bodies. So, all of that being said,
just from your perspective, like what is the distinction between those two? So for those that aren't familiar, the cryotherapy is the big tube with the nitrogen that cool you down to negative 224.
Yeah.
And then the cold water, usually in the 30s.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Sub 40 degrees.
Sub 40,
so when you look at look, I'm always going to say, when you look at the research, it's pretty wide landscape, but like sub 40 is where some of the magic is happening. Mm-hmm. It seems to feel like that 3-minute to 6-minute mark is where the magic is happening, and maybe getting in 2 rounds of 3 minutes is within over the course of half an hour is just as effective as 6 minutes straight. It's also hard because each one of our bodies is physiologically different, right? This is like bio-individualism. We need to understand what we can, how we can express ourselves in a situation like that. And again, minimum effective dose for you is going to be different for me. And so what's the range of your minimum effective dose to your maximum effective dose? And I think when you look at cryo and you look at cold showers, you're dealing a lot with like cold exposure to surface levels of skin, and you just aren't kind of cutting as deep in the sense of boosting those cold shock proteins in the same way, and there are things that we want to have happen from a longevity benefit and health optimization benefit, and building brown adipose tissue, which is the thing we talk about a lot in the ice, which is, we all talk about fat like it kind of is a bad thing, but science would say we have several different types of fat, right? That's the rabbit hole we could go down on another YouTube channel. But if you look at the 2 primary ones, it's like we have visceral fat around our organs, we have white fat, we have brown adipose tissue, brown fat. And so the white fat is the stuff we're typically like, I want to lose that maybe, I want to like lose some more of that or recomposition my body, and that's fine. The brown fat is something we thought at around 20 years old we stopped making, and then we've come to see that when we do real high levels of heat exposure, usually over like 170, and cold exposure, typically under 140, that we actually have this opportunity, our bodies will make brown adipose tissue, they will make brown fat, they will stimulate that. And the brown fat that is created in your body is helping you. It's more densely populated with mitochondria. It's like good fat to have. So we want to have that. And it also helps regulate your body temperature. Like the more of it you have, the better you get acclimated to cold and heat. And in a world where we all go from the air-conditioned house to the air-conditioned car, we're getting less resilient and less. We have less capacity to manage stressful situations, temperature being one of them.
Right, we are creatures of comfort, and that comfort is killing us.
Yeah, totally. Totally, yeah, spot on.
So as somebody is going through this process of doing cold water exposure, what would you suggest for someone to kind of what would be the things to tune into? Like how do they know they've got their minimal effective dose, and how do they know when they're at their point of diminishing returns? So there's some simple tips you might use.
Yeah, because that's the closer to the Joe Rogan story, or that this anecdote is, there is a point when you're staying in the cold too long for you, and that's the diminishing returns arc. That's like, how do I find what's in between? And even at minimum effective dose, I can push to sort of my maximum effective dose, right? It's not 1 second that you're in the cold that you're like, oh, that's it, minimum effective dose, get out. It's like you're going to play with your edges based on how your body and your mind feels. So this is what I would say to new people. I would say, number 1, your body's going to be different every day. My friend Sean Wells wrote a book. He talks a lot about stress and this allostatic load. Allostatic load just means if you imagine your stress load or your stress level of the day, every day you wake up, you have an empty-ish bucket. Maybe you have some stress automatically when you wake up. And then if you layer in blue light and the buzzing of your phone and the kids and the school and the work and the job, and like you're building and filling that bucket, that allostatic load, that stress bucket, with more and more micro stressors and all these things. So if you get in the ice at a certain point and your bucket is pretty full already, it may feel a little more intense that day. And in some moments, maybe you just came off a vacation, or I don't know, you had a relaxed day and you can get in the ice and it feels like, oh, it felt easier today. And small differential in temperature changes can also affect that as well. Just even 5 degrees once you get sub 40 is a very big difference. Right. So when people are starting, the thing I think is, know where you feel like you're at. And, if you want to start with like a cold shower or cryo to get that experience, that understanding of this is what cold feels like, then you can start there. But there's no reason that someone couldn't go over to their friend's house with a chest freezer and start in a chest freezer and start, with an ice bath in that way. It's just about deciding to do the thing and then knowing this one important point, which you clearly know, which is there's a moment that your initial body response when you first get into the cold responds to the cold strongly. And that is your body is going to do the thing, which is save me, right. Get me out of this cold. It's uncomfortable. And it doesn't understand that you're doing deliberate, intentional cold water immersion or exposure. It just thinks this is colder than we're comfortable with. If we stayed in here a long time, like very long time, it's detrimental to our core temp right. And I could die. So your body has that response. And so the thing to know is when you get in, you're going to have that response. We all have that response. It's just how you quell it and how you use the breath to manage it that gets you through those first. It's something that I've sort of coined this term called the turnover that happens in the body, because after putting like 1,000 people on the ice, you can see it happen physiologically and you can see it happen mentally. And that's the point where people actually kind of surrender to the process of saying, okay, this is cold. I see what it feels like. My body has shunted all the blood to protect my organs into the central core, right? Sometimes people get tingling in their fingers or toes, which is totally normal. And logically that shift happens. And then the other place I really see it happen is in people's eyes. When they're like, you can see this grip and then people kind of relax into it. And that to me is the turnover. And so I want to tell newbies to the cold exposure process that can take anywhere from 30 seconds to 90 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes if you're real nervous and you've worked yourself up into some anticipation, and just feeling out where that may or may not be happening, and like knowing that if you get yourself through the turnover, that you'll actually settle in, which no one ever believes until it happens, which is why I have a job coaching, because coaching people through the first few or getting them to 3 minutes, it's so nice to have someone there who's like, yo, you got this, you're fine. Who's reminding you how to breathe. Because once you get in the cold, this is the most beautiful thing. It's the power of now. There's nothing else you can think about, right? And especially the first time you're in, it's like, I'm in the cold.
Absolutely. I joke that I've done a lot of personal development work over the years, and cold water immersion is the most honest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
You can't fake it.
Yeah, you can't fake it. And then it's a beautiful coach I just went through a training with. Morosco has a certification. I just went to the weekend and we cold coach each other. And so there was another coach there with a lot of experience, and we coached each other. And he said this beautiful thing, like, as I was sitting in the ice, he said, take a minute and just listen to what the ice is telling you. And I just felt like that's, that can sound woo-woo or not to you, but the reality is there's something that I learn every time I get in the ice. There's something that I kind of figure out or I notice about my body that's an important piece that I might have all these other distractions in my life that I'm not seeing as quickly if I wasn't getting in cold. And so, rock climbers will say this thing, and yoga teachers will sometimes say this thing where as it goes on the climb, it goes in life. As it goes on the yoga mat, it goes in life. As it goes in ice, it really goes in life. Your give up is when you give up, right? The things that come up, I think, from an emotional standpoint, because that does happen to some people. They have some feels, and that's great. But those things coming up are the things that come up when you have a big stress load, when there is a moment that you have to make a decision that's important because of like timing or stress or something. And where you go in all the practice is where you will tend to go in life if you don't practice differently, right? Your breathing will shift, your mindset will go a certain way.
Right, and that was something that I thought very interesting you said too when we were talking the other night, is about not doing the breathing before the cold water.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah.
Because you said you don't have the time when something instant happens in life that's really stressful to stop and start, to do that breath.
Yeah. I mean, like, here's the thing, right? I don't ever want to be, I have so much respect for the curative properties and the way that Wim works with people. And like, let me be very clear, I've never taken his certification. I've just done online videos, lots of the information, and I know a lot of Wim Hof instructors. And so that's definitely on my docket to continue to expand my horizons. And I do understand a lot about the way that he coaches. And I have the utmost respect for him, not just because he's an amazing, like he's lovely, amazing, and his body can do these things like the rest of ours just even quite can't at this point, but that he's helped raise the bar on people around the world understanding, right? There is a direct correlation to the work Wim has done in the world that gets Joe Rogan in an ice bath, right? There is a correlation to that. It does, the dots do connect. And I remember listening to a couple gentlemen, I wish I could even find the podcast episode, but two guys I had worked with him that were like sort of the first guys to come to the States. I was on an airplane and I was listening to an episode. It might have been a Greenfield podcast or something, but it was like two guys talking about this Wim Hof method, and they were sort of the first ones to be coaching it in the US.
Was it Jesse Coomer?
I won't remember.
Oh, okay.
I won't remember. I like would have to kind of find the episode, and I should do that. But it was so, I was so interested back at that point, and this is like even 4 or 5 years before I started getting certified for intentional exposure, and I was so curious about it, and I think that Wim has a lot to offer. I also think that given the environment that we're in, at the same time, like with this quarantine world we're living in, the levels of stress we're dealing with, all the extra, this allostatic load we're all carrying around right now, that in many ways this is like dating, you look at all the ways that you can utilize breath, because this is a key component to reverse engineering your nervous system to get into the ice. And so how am I going to utilize breath to be able to reverse engineer my nervous system, to be able to manage this intentional bout of stress I'm putting on? And getting in the ice over and over and over again, as much as I do, because I do that more than heat exposure. It's just I do both, but I prefer the ice. That is, we don't ice bath to get good ice baths, right? We ice bath to get good at life, to get good at managing stress. And so if that's what we're doing, then we have to effectively find a way that we can practice getting into the ice without having a huge routine before, because when someone cuts you off in traffic, when the baby is, rolling in the street and you have to lift the car off it or whatever, like hopefully that doesn't happen, but whatever thing happens, we don't have the time to necessarily prep ourselves too much, right? It's an instantaneous load of stress. It could be that you're like doing a max lift at the gym. Like there are moments you can take a little bit more time to prep the breath, to prep the body. But I want to train, this is what I train for. I want to train stress, so that when it really happens to me, my body can manage it better and more safely, and I can just be mentally under better control, right? This mental toughness component of cold exposure is, for me, something that you can't necessarily measure it in a lab or the research or the studies, but it's a massive shift. You see it, right? People's confidence change in the way that they're like, wow, I just conquered that. It's amazing how they feel about themselves, how they walk out of the space when they're done being coached in the cold, how they talk about themselves to their friends in the mirror. All of that shifts. And it's like, there's a lot of power in the cold. So, Wim has this very specific style, and it works on a number of levels, and it's helping people boost immune function. It's helping people just get healthier. And I don't always coach people in with superventilated or, hyperventilative breathing. I like to try different things. And it's why I work with a woman named Kimmy Moss at a gym called Deuce in LA. And she created this 8-week program that's like ice and like CrossFit style training a little bit, using breath as a variable, using cold as a variable, and using the sauna that we have there as a variable. And so I've co-led that course with her and really gotten to see a lot of different bodies reacting in different ways. And you see this too. You can go, depending on the day and the person and the experience, it's like an ice bath and breath work is going to be different for everyone. Am I shifting the pH in some direction? Yes. Am I, getting someone to go more into a parasympathetic state with a specific style of breathing? Yes. But the variables are not going to be like, oh, it's like this exact place I'm taking everyone to. It's about lung capacity, biomechanics, what the cold feels like, what's in your mind, how much other stress you have. And so how do we get people to step in confidently and not have to have a ton of prep is something that I've been curious about, right? I want to get them to a place where anyone who tries cold for the first time knows that they can conquer it.
Right. And I think that's part of the value of having a coach or somebody to work with around that, because I think we're all looking for like the prescriptive approach to, well, I want the 5 steps, then if I just follow those 5 steps, it will be perfect. And then, but we're not paying attention to the fact that we've all got such different, genetics and health and fitness and stress levels and all these different things going on in our lives that, it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach to it.
Yeah, just body fat percentage makes a difference when you're in the cold, like how you manage it, like in many ways. The other piece of this is that, I always say the anticipation of the ice or the anticipation of the cold is worse than the cold itself. Mm-hmm. And that's like, if you're out there and you're going to try it, recognize that if you stand at the edge of the ice tub or the chest freezer and you just make the decision, I train with someone, Jacques Devore in LA, and he's like a Maximum Overload. He wrote this book, and he really talks a lot about how you approach the bar is how the lift goes. Like there is a neural connection to the decision of attitude when you approach the bar, right? And maybe you're getting that extra 5 pounds, or maybe if you're standing in front of it and you're knowing that you're leaning into that and you're going to go do a back squat, approaching the bar in a wishy-washy way is only going to continue that patterning. And so when we stand next to the chest freezer, the ice bath, whatever it is, making that decision before you step in that you're going to be good at that and you're going to be fine, it adds a lot of value to the experience and to your capacity when you get in the ice. Right. So how do we stand at the edge of the tub? A lot of times with the Morosco method too, we talk about putting arms akimbo, standing in a superhero stance, and saying, okay, I'm getting in. And then it's just when you decide, and the moment before your brain starts to talk you out of it, you just go. Step in, submerge yourself in the water. I have lots of people go under and do head plunges. That's a whole different, when you're ready, you do that. And then, coming up and regulating your breathing in the best way possible for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about going in, do you coach people that are very brand new to get their shoulders underneath the water, or will people get benefit from just as much benefit as going into their
You're going to get benefit from going in, but if you're going to go in the water, you might as well get up to your neck, get mammalian dive response happening. There's a lot of magic that happens in that, and the way that your body will also regulate and understand, and that turnover will happen faster. I think there are times when I don't really let people not attempt to get in. I will let them keep their arms out if they feel like they need to. Everyone's got a different thought process and tolerance to it. So you start where you're at. And my dream for everyone is that I can get them to stay in for 2 minutes, and a portion of the plunge, they will try putting their arms in and they will try to get their neck into the water. Just could we try it? Could we explore what that would feel like, even if it's for a second and then you come up and you're like, okay, that's enough. But it does actually help the turnover faster. It helps your body acclimate to the water temperature faster so that you can settle in and surrender, which to me is an important piece of this, is I am teaching my nervous system directionally with breath how to calm. It may still be playing in a sympathetic range. Let's be honest, we're in sub 40 degree temperatures, but I'm getting my nervous system to calm by using breath, by using eye gaze to, directionally, parasympathetic is right there. You can calm, it'll feel great, it'll feel good. Try these techniques. Because before we can think about it, our nervous system is responding, right? And the only way that we can sort of adjust that is breathing like everything is super fine. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is it tells our body, even though the body's but we're cold, but your breathing is fine, but your eye gaze is peripheral, you're taking in the whole landscape. That, I guess we're not sympathetic. Are we sympathetic? And so there's this bit of this calming that happens in that dance, and it's so beautiful to see. And when the most beautiful, part of the reason I continue to coach people is the most beautiful moment when you see someone have a turnover, especially if the first couple times they did the ice plunge, they felt like, this is hard, I'm scared. Lots of, let's be real, there are micro traumas and traumas in people's lives, especially if they have issues with water or swimming or stuff comes up, and it's cool, it's all part of it. But getting people to that place where they have the turnover and seeing that shift and seeing them settle in, you've seen it before surely, is one of the most beautiful things, because it's really, it's not about giving up, it's about being okay in the space of stress and saying, okay, I got this. And that's to me where the ritual needs to exist in some way, where the oorah behavior doesn't always work. I have a lot of different styles of coaching, because you have to coach people for who they are in the tub. But you'll see someone who can back squat 400 pounds or something, get in the ice and attempt to muscle their way through it, right? For lack of a better expression. And they're missing half the benefits. And you're not really learning the lesson the ice is, in my opinion, trying to give you, which is like, hey, how can I masterfully work with my breath and do this and not just hold on for dear life in the stress, because that's what's going to happen in traffic and with the challenges with your work or whatever. And so that, to me, is it's an interesting thing, and it's different for everyone. It's not like that is a big, strong guy only that's doing that. Some women muscle their way through it. Like, I'm just going to hold on for dear life. And that's not the way to do it.
Right.
There are ways to talk your body into doing it that feel in a comfortable way, in a more comfortable way.
Yeah, there's something interesting around that I've noticed, especially earlier in, I wasn't really as aware of what specifically was going on, but when I'm up to my neck in the water, there's something about having that full embrace for my entire body that just, the intensity of that is like really high. Mm-hmm. But for me, that's like 1,000 times easier than doing a cold shower.
Yeah, I don't love the pelting of the cold. Although, let me be honest, like here in Austin, there's no cold water. It doesn't come, I can't take a cold shower here. It's like, what's happening?
Right.
It's like a cool shower. It's like a lukewarm shower.
Right. Yeah, people freak out here in Barton Springs, which is typically no colder than about 67.
No, right? You and I were like, that's warm.
Right. Well, I'm a native from Austin, and I used to, as a kid, I hated Barton Springs because I thought the water was freezing and it was too cold, and I hated it. Now it's like, boy, it's not even close to being cold enough. It was an interesting transition. Yeah,
and for anyone who doesn't getting cold, this sounds like the conversation like, right, it doesn't get, but it does. Like, I have had, like, my hot water heater went out after I did this. I was like, I do a lot of little like ice tests and things, but I did 34 days straight, ice bath 6 minutes a day. And at the end of it, a day or two after I finished that, the hot water went out in my house, and I was like, I'm gonna get in a cold shower. And I got in a cold shower, and it felt like a warm shower, like not hot shower, but I was like, "What? This is so easy." Like, your body in a very short time will acclimate to the cold, and you just get better at managing temperature. And that's, to me, that's like fascinating science.
Right. I remember years ago there was a book that came out that was called The 10 Biomarkers of Aging, or maybe it was The Biomarkers of Aging, and one of those things in there was the ability to regulate your internal temperature.
Yeah, important.
So, yeah.
Important. Also, lung capacity. They talk about longevity and lung capacity now. Very, 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 like, grip strength was always kind of a barometer of longevity, and you hear that a lot in the fitness world. But as you age, but also lung capacity. Like Nestor's book, Breath, James Nestor's book, Breath, talks a bit about that as a good barometer also. So that's like important to think about how we breathe, how we take care of our nervous system, how we feel safe, and that will correlate to how we can channel our best selves into the chest freezer or the cold exposure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, this is an amazing conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So is there anything else you'd like to add or address or talk about while we have a little bit of time left?
I just think the most important thing is for people to really meet themselves where they're at, understand that you don't have to do 60 seconds if you don't want to. Like, start where you're at, and you're working against your personal record. So it's like, how do I start at a minute? How do I start? If you start with a cold shower, great. How can you make it a little bit more minimum effective dose, right? I'm going to step in on cold. I'm going to do 3 minutes in the shower. I'm going to get out on cold, because that's a bigger challenge than getting in warm and then going cold and then going warm again. So how do you just step up and scaffold the level of intensity that's right for your journey, and then get to the ice faster than you need to, faster than you think you're going to, because it's not as hard as it seems, and it may look intimidating, but it's just the health benefits, the way you feel, the way it's changed me as a person and the way I show up in the world. It's a simple tool that's relatively inexpensive to really shift your state, your health, your well-being, your stress level, the way you manage stress. And so it's like, put your hands on your hips, don't over-anticipate, step in the ice, feel what cold feels like, listen to the lessons it's giving you. I think, anyone can do anything for 2 to 3 minutes, really. So getting out there and just, just you take the plunge.
Right.
Pun intended.
Right, that's awesome.
Just get out and do it.
That's
awesome. And the one thing I would also say that's, I think, important to always mention when we have these conversations is there is a modicum of personal responsibility and sovereignty that we all need to have, which is, if you have any contraindications and your doctor is clearly saying to you, no, be mindful of what's going on with you. If you have a pacemaker, if you have diabetes, if you're pregnant and you're not ice bathing already, like, you need to be careful and you need to not do those things. And then there's two other things I want to talk about that I think are important pieces, besides just like knowing that you're ready to do it from a medical standpoint, because we are not doctors, right, and you need to decide for yourself. For women specifically, I want to say that it's important to me that you go slow to go fast. And so I think ice plunging every day for a woman, there's not a ton of research around women still, and there's not a ton of research around this, but I have anecdotally seen several women, including myself, who have tested hormones before and tested hormones after. My daily 34-day plunge, I tested before and after. And I will say that, just to be quite transparent, my estrogen sort of fell off a cliff. My period came 9 days early. Like, that signals to me that there's a huge hormonal dysregulation happening from that. And I went in with relatively stable hormones. Especially if you're going through perimenopause or anything early symptomatic stuff, if you're super estrogen dominant, if you're having a lot of challenges being dysregulated from a hormone standpoint, and by hormones I mainly mean sex hormones, or if your cortisol's through the roof, it's like there's no need for us as females. We can get a good benefit 2 to 3 times a week. Awesome. I think doing it every day as a woman is not optimal, right? And again, do what you want, but not optimal. And the other thing that some good, really solid research Thomas Seeger was just sharing with me, he's the head, he's one of the chief cheese founders of Morosco Forge. He was sharing with me, because I ask a lot about training, like when we see benefits with ice and training. So people will talk a lot about, waiting 5 hours, or, not affecting your, while it helps delete onset muscle soreness, doing the ice, but if you're working out to get a bigger composition or work on hypertrophy or growing your muscles, then you can stunt the mTOR production. So people will sometimes say, oh, don't get in the ice after training, and all of that is fine. Like, make those decisions based on what physique you're working on, knowing that one ice bath after one training bout directly after is probably not gonna do big detriment to your muscle development if you're really working out hard. But for men, and this is a wildly Googleable thing, that one of the biggest terms besides hair loss for men is boosting testosterone. So I'm assuming it's males, but whoever's Googling it, it's getting Googled a lot. And the research behind testosterone boosting benefits of ice is, I think, real important to share here, which is studies are showing that all of the best testosterone boosting benefits are coming when you ice plunge before a training, not after. So if men are layering that in, I think men have a better propensity, because you don't have as much hormonal fluctuation monthly or daily. I'm like 30 different people in a month, and you might be 1 or 2. That lack of fluctuation sort of has dictated, and I've watched men ice plunge daily without any issues. And the second thing is, if you're going to work and you're working towards boosting your testosterone as you age, or if you have challenges with testosterone, layering the ice in before, like ice plunging before, and letting your body re-regulate some temperature, and then going right into your training bout, is a way to 10x the benefits. They're not seeing the ice after, 5 hours later the next day. They're not seeing benefits come that way. We're seeing benefits in testosterone beforehand. So people can always hit me up if they want more of that research without getting too nerdy in that mix. So I think those are just important differences between biological males and biological females, right? Whatever landscape we're in for, the bodies that we come in, we can all ice plunge as long as it feels safe and doctor approved or whatever. But from a biology standpoint, we need to just be, I think, kind of clear on the differences that exist.
Right. That's an important distinction. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if people are interested in women, specifically you coach women, and if someone wants to get in touch with you or to coach with you or to work with you, how do they reach you? What's the best way to get in touch?
The easiest way, most people hit me up on Instagram. It seems to be like the big communication tool of society right now, but it's at Warrior Woman Mode. And my website is Warrior Woman Mode, and I have an online course which includes a module all around breath and a module all around cold exposure. And I work with women one-on-one as well, and I do a lot of cold coaching around the country, and there's more to come on that, which is super exciting that I can't talk about yet, but I have plans in the works.
Cool.
So call me and ask about cold exposure if you want to, get involved more in that process.
All right, excellent. Kristin, thank you so much for having this conversation and coming out to meet with me today.
Of course,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that we met, and thank you so much for giving all of this knowledge to the world so that we don't have to go through all the data and mess it up 14 times. I would have never, that sealant saved my life in there. I was like, oh, this is so perfect. Finally someone who knows. So thank you for sharing your technical skill and ability and all the work that you've done. And for anyone who's out there, you need to get this ebook. It's like it has all the dirty details on, you know, getting yourself set up with a chest freezer as easy as possible without having to go back and forth to the store 1,000 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Go to the Home Depot 1,000 times so you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Kristin.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here.